Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to just let you know that if I was going to give this episode a trigger warning, it would be about mental health and suicidal ideation. This is a very vulnerable episode. It's rare that I am hesitant to hit the post button on an episode, and that was me with this one. I had to talk to my fiance and be like, should I put this out into the world? And he said, Morgan, the name of your show is Let's Get Vulnerable. And he was reassuring me that he thinks that there's people that this episode can help. So this is a vulnerable one. I gave you the trigger warning. And then I also just want to let you know that if you're struggling with your mental health, specifically if you're having depression, suicidal ideation, I did put a link in the show notes. It's the 988 Lifeline. I know that's an incredible resource. So I'm going to put that in the show notes, and just know you're not alone. You are so not alone. And I hope that this episode helps somebody listening. One other thing I was aware of as I was recording this is you'll hear me talk about my good friend Anthony, and I started to realize why he has been on my heart and mind so much. I mean, he always is, but recently just more and more and more. And I realized that this is the 4-year anniversary of his passing is coming up this October. So he's just really on my heart. And I'm opening up to you about that loss and how I was able to grow through it. And I think that for those of you who have been curious about spirituality and maybe even understanding kind of where my spiritual life came from, this will also be an interesting episode. So I hope you enjoy it. And obviously, I would love to hear from you. I always value your feedback. So if you love this episode, and if you're also like, wow, that was too vulnerable, I am open to all the feedback. You can always send me a message on Instagram at Dr. Morgan Coaching, Dr. Morgan Coaching on IG. I'd love to hear from you. All right, enjoy. Welcome to the Let's Get Vulnerable podcast. It's your host, Dr. Morgan. And today's topic is something that I've never talked about before. So I'm excited to dive in and talk about this with you. I think a lot of you are actually going to relate to this episode. And I might get a little personal, might get a little bit vulnerable, but this podcast is called Let's Get Vulnerable. So I know y'all are ready for it. I want to just check in with you and make sure you know that the podcast is available on YouTube. So if you want to hang out, if you want to see my cute Boundaries Are Hot hat that I have on, and somehow I actually have a long sleeve that is like the same color. So we're matching. If you want to see that, you can head over to YouTube. And I think it's just fun when you have video. It feels like we're out to coffee. And I have my little coffee drink here with me. So we're having a cup of coffee. We're hanging out, right? It's just a little bit more personal. What I've been doing for my coffee lately, I do just one shot of espresso. Okay. Because we're reducing cortisol, working on balancing my hormones. So I just get one shot of espresso a day, and then I mix it with my protein drinks. I like to do the Premier Protein Cinnamon flavor. So, and I put it on ice. I add a little bit of stevia, a little bit more cinnamon because I love cinnamon so much. And I mix it all up, and you get this iced coffee protein. You're still getting caffeine, but you're helping keep your blood sugar stable because of the protein. So anyways, that's my whole new coffee situation that I'm on after not being able to have coffee for months and months because I was working on my hormones. So now even just having this one shot is like a miracle. Love it. Anyways, head over to YouTube. It's more personal. It's more fun. So check it out. Today's topic let's get on to that before I continue to tell you all my favorite drinks, because I'm one of those people where I have like 7 drinks at once. Maybe I should do a whole episode on the things I drink. Anyways, I digress. We are talking about post-traumatic growth. You've heard the term of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We know that PTSD is bad. PTSD is when you experience a traumatic event and you continue to re-experience the event, and you have anxiety and you develop panic attacks. And for some people, you can develop complex PTSD where you have all kinds of symptoms, right? And your PTSD actually wasn't from one specific incident, but maybe it was repeated trauma over and over. And PTSD is something that we have to work on, and it's a diagnosis that you can absolutely treat and you can recover from PTSD. So that's one way of looking at what happens after trauma. But there's another term that's been coming out more recently, and I think this is equally important to look at, and that term is post-traumatic growth. So I want to talk to you about what it is, and I want to see if you identify with this PTG. And then I'm going to share with you a little bit about something I went through that was incredibly traumatic and how I developed post-traumatic growth through this. So post-traumatic growth is a psychological theory that describes the positive changes that can occur after experiencing a stressful or challenging life event. So it's different from resilience, okay, which is the ability to return to how you were functioning before the trauma. Post-traumatic growth is new growth, that it changes, right? So it's like changing you as a person. It changes the way that you think, that you live, that you show up in the world, right? So this was really researched more in the mid 1990s by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, and they developed this theory. And there's actually an inventory that you can take. It's a 21 question inventory. But I just want to give you some examples. So what are some things that are signs of post-traumatic growth? Let's see if you relate to any of these. So one would be new understandings of yourself, the world, and how to relate to others. Another is new possibilities in life. So seeing new opportunities, new possibility. Developing personal strength. So becoming stronger. Another is spiritual change. Spiritual change. So this could be developing a relationship with a higher power. Maybe for you, it's returning to church, but some sort of spiritual change. Another sign is improving your relationships. Another sign, increased compassion. And how about this one? A willingness to change the things that need to be changed. And I think this is really important to think about, because so often we go through these horrible, hard things and we focus on PTSD, or we focus on the ways that we are now, what's the word? I don't want to say that we are now, I'll just say we focus on the ways that we've changed in a negative light, and we don't notice maybe how we've changed in a positive way. And this is not positive psychology. I never want to discredit someone's pain or the post-traumatic stress that they've had, or the flashbacks or the trauma, right? I think 1,000% we have to acknowledge that, and it's valid, okay? And can we also have the dialectic, right? Where it's like, two things are true at once. And we can look at, well, how are we better? How have we changed for good? You owe it to yourself to also look at that. If you're going to look at how have things been harder, let's also look at, well, how have things improved, or how has this made me a better person? And as someone who has experienced numerous traumatic events in her life, I don't wish trauma on anyone. I really don't. And I think those of you who have experienced big T trauma, little t trauma, relational trauma, trauma of any kind, you know that there is the version of you before the trauma and there's the version of you after the trauma. And what I want to invite you to do in today's episode is to just think about that possibility that there are some positive shifts in who you became after the trauma, right? All those things I listed, there's some positive shifts. So one thing that I think is important to think about, once again, is when you go through something traumatic, you obviously do need to spend the time in the grieving, in the pain. You're probably in that fight or flight mode. So getting to this place of post-traumatic growth, I'm not saying that like, oh, you should be there immediately. Okay. No. For a lot of us, it takes time. It takes time to get to this place. And I do want to share with you a personal story because I think it actually really highlights this. And this is something that's still hard for me to talk about, but I think some of you, it's just going to help you get it on a deeper level. So I'm going to be vulnerable and talk with you, right? One thing that I experienced that forever changed me, and it's only recently that I can really grasp how deeply this changed me, is I lost one of my very best friends, Anthony. I lost him to suicide. If you've heard me talk about this on past episodes, you might remember some of the story. But Anthony was a clinical psychologist. He had the biggest heart. He was an incredible friend. He was probably one of the best psychologists that I've ever known. He was a top researcher at a well-known university. He had many published articles, had a 4.0 GPA in graduate school while working a full caseload. This was an extraordinary human being. And to lose him in this way was one of the greatest pains of my life. Honestly, in some ways, just so vastly different from the loss of my mom, because the loss of my mom was an accident. And there's so many nuances when you lose someone to suicide, and the guilt that comes up in going through this process. I will never forget getting the phone call from Anthony's mom, falling to the ground and, sobbing uncontrollably for hours. And that feeling in my body that I could not get up from the floor, that there was no way that I would ever be able to stand again. Any of you who have had that kind of pain, you never forget that moment of complete shatter, like the shattering of your heart. And that's what I felt in that moment. And what people don't know, and I don't talk about this very much, but I think I should, is that my friend Anthony was in an abusive relationship. And it was going on for a really long time. And there was all kinds of things that he tried, that I tried. And I look back on it and I just go, he was really stuck. He was really stuck. And anybody that's been in an abusive relationship, it's really hard to get out. I was in one for 1.5 years and I almost didn't get out of it. And I think about where he was, and I'm not saying that it was 100% the reason for why he died, but I know that it was a factor. I know in my heart that it was a factor. And one of the things that happened is in the aftermath of losing one of my very best friends in this way, in the aftermath of it, I was angry. I experienced the deepest depression that I've ever experienced. I myself was at a very low place with little will to live because of the guilt, because of the sadness, because of how much pain I was in. I did not think that I could live with the pain that I was experiencing. And I know some of you might be there right now, and I just want you to know it can get better. But I know what that's like. And for a few weeks, even months after I lost my friend, I was in this place of having suicidal ideation, of wishing that I wouldn't wake up, of thinking about ways that maybe I could die, right? And I just want to normalize this. If you're a human, you've had maybe moments or you've had periods of this. We just have to normalize this, okay? This is not like something is horribly wrong with you. This is a human experience, and this is sometimes what happens in grieving. So if you've gone through this, my heart goes out to you, and I'm sharing it with you vulnerably now because I want to normalize it. So I was going through that, and here I am. I already was coaching and had the podcast at that point and had this incredible team and had all these amazing things in my life. But I was just in so much pain that I didn't think that I could continue. And there was a moment where it was late at night. Once again, I had so much guilt. I felt like I should have known. I felt like there was something I could have done. I was just in this just deep, dark pit of self-loathing, guilt, and so much pain. And there was a night that I had thought about taking pills, and I had access to, I didn't know if this was going to work. I mean, I was like, well, maybe this will work. It's just a huge Costco bottle of Tylenol. And I was ready to take it and take it all. And some of you listening, that may completely shock you. Some of you're like, yeah, grief does that. Like, grief can do that to you when you're in so much pain. And in that moment of being ready to take my life, something happened. I cannot even describe it to you with words because it was such a felt experience. But what happened to me in that moment was a bright white light flooded my vision, and I heard a voice, and it said to me, go grab your Aunt Mary's Bible. Go grab your Aunt Mary's Bible. And I hadn't thought about it. My Aunt Mary had passed away. I knew where her Bible was. It was upstairs. And it was this moment of, I felt like I wasn't even making the decision. I just felt like my body moved for me. And I sprinted up the stairs and I went to get my aunt's Bible. And I was crying, and I sat with the Bible all night in bed. I didn't sleep. and I just read it. I read it, and I found passages that helped me. I found things that spoke to me. And I don't know what your belief system is. I don't know where you fall when it comes to religion, but I do hope that part of this story maybe opens you up to thinking about a higher power. And for me, it was about feeling the higher power's love, feeling God's love for me in that moment, and being able to receive it and to know that my life mattered, that I was going to be okay, And that I found a passage about God being close to those who are grieving. And in that moment, I was able to actually let God in, and I was able to give him my pain and my suffering and the depression and everything about not wanting to be alive anymore. I was able to give all that over. And after that time, I started to develop a spiritual life. I started to develop prayer and a relationship with God. And that was something that I had sort of had when I was younger, but not really. So for the first time ever, as an adult, I started to develop my spirituality. And this is an example of post-traumatic growth, of where something so painful and horrific that I experienced led me to developing a spiritual life. And I can tell you this, I was able to take my experience and I was able to use it as fuel to help more people. If you go to my book, this is gonna make me emotional. I'm very emotional already, but it's making me even more emotional. If you go to my book, okay, and it's on Amazon if you don't have it yet, but you can go and you'll see the dedication, who it's for. It says, for Anthony Lombardi, love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence. And I dedicated this book to Anthony because losing him connected me even more deeply to helping people have healthy relationships, because it brought me to this place of just realizing how important my mission is, of helping people be securely attached, of helping people have relationships that add value to their life, that feel emotionally safe, and of ending abusive relationships. And it was with Anthony's help, my angel. He's one of my angels, right? It was with his help that I was able to write my book. It was with his help that I was able to serve hundreds and hundreds of clients. And I took that pain from losing him, and I took it as an opportunity to make a promise to him that I would help as many people as possible heal, because I know that that's what he would want too, because he had such a big heart. Like when I tell you, man, he was such a good psychologist. Like he helped so many people. He cared even too much about his clients. And I needed to find a way to help that legacy live on. And that has been a big driver for me in why I do what I do. And sometimes, I don't know, like I just think about, what if I hadn't been able to find the meaning? What if I hadn't been able to connect to my spirituality? I don't know where I would be. I don't know where I would be, and I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. So that whole part about post-traumatic growth and using it to heal, using it to heal. Do you have something in your life that you know that there's a different version of you on the other side, right? I think it's really important. It's really important that we think about that, right? One thing I will say too is this totally changed my value system, completely changed my value system of valuing family, valuing my close relationships, having more wisdom around, okay, what really matters in life? Love, service, the people that you love being happy and well and having good relationships, a relationship with God, being connected to your integrity and the authentic calling on your life, right? Like outside of that, not a lot really matters, you know? Going through this experience just radically changed who I was as a person. And even though I have experienced loss before, to experience it in this way was just completely life-changing. So I wanted to invite you into this concept because maybe, just maybe, there's a way for you to look at some of the things that have happened to you and to tune into your own post-traumatic growth. What are the ways that you became a different person? What are the ways you became a better person? I want you to just think about that. And then one thing I want to add is I was looking at some of the research on this concept because you know me, I'm a research nerd. I love to read the latest articles, okay? And I was looking at what they were saying in terms of post-traumatic growth being one of those things that if you have developed it, that it will propel you to leadership positions, to becoming a CEO, to founding movements, that when we can go through hard things and then we can also let it change us for the good and let it connect us to our purpose, let it help us develop healthy coping skills, right? Just like I've experienced. When you can do that, you are so capable of creating whatever you want in the world. You're unstoppable. So I want you to just think about what are the ways that you've experienced post-traumatic growth. And then I want you to know this, that you might be in that place where it hasn't come for you yet, where you're stuck in the trauma. Maybe you're experiencing PTSD or you're experiencing grief that feels so heavy that you can't get up off the floor, like I described. And if you're there, I just want to send you so much love. I just want you to know it's okay. It's okay to be there. And I want you to know this, you don't have to stay there. No matter how long you've been stuck, no matter what's happened, you can always move through it. You can always heal. You can always become securely attached. You can always develop new ways of looking at the world and new ways of looking at yourself. Okay. And if you know that you don't want to do it alone, which I highly recommend not doing this alone because it's impossible. So if you know that you can't do this alone, then make sure you get help, whether it's with us inside of the Empowered Secure Love program. We would love to have you. You can go apply using the link in the show notes. So maybe you want to be part of my community and you want to have individualized one-on-one support. Maybe it's somewhere else. I don't know. You need to listen to your gut about what feels right to you. But I just want you to know this, you're so worthy of getting support and you don't have to stay stuck. Don't have to stay stuck. And I just want to also take a moment and just acknowledge that if you are in an abusive relationship, if you're in a relationship that is bad for your mental health, I need you to be really honest about that, please. And what I know is that when you become securely attached, you are able to separate your relationship from your worthiness, and you're able to make decisions that support you having a healthy relationship with yourself, having good mental health, right? So sometimes instead of focusing on getting out of the relationship, sometimes we have to put that to the side and we just have to say, focus on you, focus on healing, focus on becoming securely attached, focus on becoming that version of you that can get out of that relationship because they know their worth, they know their value, and then they would never put up with that kind of relationship. So sometimes starting with trying to leave is the wrong place to start. I need you to start with working on you. And once again, if you need help with that, apply to the Empowered Secure Love program. I would love to help you get to a securely attached place. That's my mission. Now you know some of the background as to why, but that's my mission, is to help as many people as possible become securely attached and have high self-worth and great relationships. Okay. I hope you got some value out of this episode. I know this was a heavy episode, and I will put a little trigger warning on this, and I apologize if this brought up some emotions for you, but I also think that sometimes we do need to feel these deeper things, and we need to slow down, and we need to get really, really clear and ask ourselves, who are we becoming? And what are the ways that we've been shaped by the hard things that have happened to us? Have we been able to grow through the trauma we've experienced? So hopefully this brought up some deep reflection for you. You got some value out of it. I want you to know that I'm cheering you on, that you can always become secure. And of course, as always, I'm wishing you high self-worth and great relationships. I'll talk to you soon.